Today we're going to be talking about a old ass movie made in 1989 called She Devil. You've probably never heard of this fucking movie. This is where I come in, where I explain to you what this movie is about and how interesting it is. So let's get into it. I want you to imagine this with me for a second. Imagine you are a housewife and you've got 2 beautiful children, a husband, a white picket fence, and then you find out that your husband has been cheating on you. What do? A, stay and try to work things out. B, leave him and take the kids with you. C, find his mistress and beat her ass. D, find your husband and beat his ass. Or E, spend over a year planning strategically to ruin your husband and his mistress's life by infiltrating and destroying the things they care about the most. Go ahead and choose. We are talking about the 1989 dark comedy starring Roseanne Barr and Meryl Streep, She Devil. But yeah, we do not support Roseanne Barr and none of her bullshit over here. Anyways, so let's start off with Act 1. The movie basically starts off with Roseanne, aka Ruth. She's in a perfume shop and she's basically making a whole monologue about how fucking ugly she is. In her monologue, she talks about how women like her, who are conventionally unattractive, have to work twice as hard to look pretty. Then for some reason, we get 2 girls in the beginning of the scene and they're just like all up in the mirror with like hella yuck mouth, and I was like, what is the point of this? Ew. And they just smile and it's just like, what? Why did we need to see them? We move on and Roseanne, aka Ruth, is shopping and she's trying to look nice for a work event that her husband is taking her to. She goes to the salon and is sitting in the salon chair getting a perm done, and then she sees a woman on the television. It's Meryl Streep. This woman is in this fictional movie named Mary Fisher. Mary Fisher is a writer. She writes a lot of erotic romance novels, and my girl Ruth is a very, very big fan of her. She loves her books. When Ruth sees Mary Fisher on the TV, she's like, wow. Ruth gets her perm done and the shit looks crazy as fuck. She gets out of the salon, she calls Bob, her husband from work, and she's like, Bob, like I can't wait to go to this work event. I'm so excited. And he's like, girl, it's really not that big of a deal. Like you don't even gotta come. Like it's just a work event. He clearly does not want Ruth to come to this event, but she's like super excited about it. Bob is Ruth's husband. He works as an accountant. Bob and Ruth are at the event and Ruth is wearing a very, very, in my opinion, ugly ass floral top and chunky pearls.
Well, I actually take this part back because I feel like I feel really bad. Like she was just trying to get her style together and people are making fun of her in there. Like, I mean, it's not the most flattering top and accessories, but she's trying. Ruth is just trying her best. Okay. Back to the video.
While she's just walking around, she decides to take her heels off in the middle of the floor, and instead of just like sitting her ass down somewhere, she ends up losing her balance and spilling her drink all over Mary Fisher. Like I said earlier, Ruth is a pretty big fan of Mary Fisher's books, so she starts glazing the fuck out of Mary. Ruth's husband suddenly pops up and he's like, oh Ruth, you fucking klutz, go and get some towels for this woman. The audacity to ask her to get the towels is crazy. Like, dude, you're a whole man, go get the towels. Ruth leaves Mary and Bob alone while she goes to get the napkins, and Bob and Mary end up having this like first love, oh my gosh, our eyes met sort of interaction, and their turquoise bluish eyes meet and he starts putting all the moves on her. She's flirting with him and then he takes off his jacket and offers it to Mary. He's doing all of this and his wife is like probably 10 feet away from him. He has absolutely no fucking shame. So then she starts holding his arm as if this is her man. Mind you, Ruth is still there. Ruth is like somewhere in this gala and they are acting like they are already husband and wife. Bob, for some reason, decides to take Mary home, which if I was Ruth, I'd be like, fuck that shit. Why the fuck do you need to take this grown ass woman home? Mind you, this is Mary Fisher. This woman is rich as fuck. She can go get an Uber, a taxi. She can go get another man to take her home. Like, we are not taking her home. If I was Ruth, I would have already been able to peep game. Like, bitch, why are you trying to get a ride with my man? You're weird. So anyways, Bob ends up taking her home. Bob is driving. Mary's in the front seat. Ruth is in the back. His wife is literally in the back seat. There's absolutely no respect for her. The respect is out the fucking window. And Bob's car is dingy as fuck. I don't understand what's going on in Mary's mind, because I'm like, girl, he's not fucking rich. If you're gonna like be a homewrecker, make sure the money is there. Like, come on, do better, girl. Bob decides to drop Ruth off at home first because he doesn't want to make a U-turn. What the fuck does that mean? And before she leaves, he tells Mary like, oh, it was nice meeting you, because she's a big fan of Mary and her books. And Mary's like, that's nice, bitch, you are so fucking mean. Like, I would have been like, never mind, fuck you and your books. Anyways, Bob didn't even drop Ruth off at their house. He dropped her off at the end of the block of their neighborhood, and she had to walk all the way to her front door. Damn, girl, you need to get some balls. They get to Mary's house. He drops Mary off, and before he leaves, she asks if he can take a look at some of her finances, you know, since he's an accountant. He decides to go inside. In my opinion, I feel like just Mary had an agenda from jump. She was like, I'm leaving here with something. So anyways, they both decide to go inside so that they can go look at Mary's finances. And when they get to the front door, a man named Garcia opens up, and he's holding a dog, and he's wearing, you know, a robe. The first thing he does is he's like, you know, Mrs. Fisher, I apologize. I tried waiting up for you. He looks very jealous when he sees Bob. Mary interrupts Garcia, which is like her butler, I assume. She basically shoos him off, and she says, no, you're all good. You didn't need to wait up for me. Got some new dick. Bye. Bob and Mary are drinking, and they're talking about taxes and shit like that. She's talking about how writing can be so lonely, and while he's sitting on the couch, she proceeds to lift her hand up and then plop it right down on his crotch. And I'm just like, she wants the D bad. She gives him them bedroom eyes, you know, she's caressing her chest, and next thing you know, they get straight to it. Glasses drop, and they go down like a PG-13 movie. Meanwhile, Ruth is in bed reading Mary's books, waiting for her man, while her man is in Mary. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, and Ruth is still waiting up for her man. So then Bob finally comes home the next morning, and he has a whole lie prepared, talking about how his tire blew out and he had to get a hotel. And Ruth's like, why didn't you call? And he was like, I didn't want to bother you. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's just like, you asshole. He also comes home with news that Mary Fisher is his new client for his accounting business. Like, I'm sure after all that, she is a new client. Ruth already knows what's up. She says it very clearly. This nigga is having an affair with Mary Fisher. Ruth tries to confront Bob about this. Bob ends up telling Ruth she's crazy. He wouldn't do anything to hurt the kids, and he's not cheating with Mary. She's just a client. And then it cuts to him and Mary kissing, holding hands, and running on the beach. Ruth ends up justifying her husband's behavior as him going through a phase. Girl, how many times have we heard this fucking story? So she's basically like, it's okay, baby. Like, I know what you're doing, but I'ma just be, you know, holding it down until you're done itching that scratch. Ruth describes Mary as just a flame, a novelty, and an infatuation. She's basically like, he knows where home is, which is the worst. This is the worst woman you can be, honestly. I feel like a lot of women's lives are like this. They end up hating on their man's mistress, but they don't hold their husbands accountable, like, at all. So anyways, Bob and Mary have a montage of them canoodling and kissing each other, and Mary ends up giving Bob this ring that says RM on it. It's a very gaudy ring. It's giving sugar mama. After Mary gives Bob the ring, he's like, I love you.
Just a fling, a novelty, an infatuation. Bob doesn't love you.
I love you.
Their relationship is really deepening. Now, Ruth is basically still in her phase of trying to remind him where home is. And so she goes to the grocery store to make a dish he'll like. And his parents are also coming over for dinner. And I'm just like, girl, the only thing he wants to eat is Mary Fisher's pussy. Like, I'm sorry. You can't make that. You can't get that at the store. She's going grocery shopping with her children, and her daughter has a magazine, and she's looking at an article that says how to win your man back or some shit, which I feel like is sad as fuck. Meanwhile, her husband is rolling around the bed with Mary, like literally just fucking rolling around. Anyways, after they have like sex, I'm assuming that's what that was, he starts going under the covers, and she's like, ooh, what are you doing? And she's thinking she's about to get some head. The whole time he's just trying to get out of them covers.
Embarrassing.
Then he immediately starts putting his clothes on because he needs to be on his way home to meet his parents for dinner at his house. Mary's like, oh, baby boy, you ain't gotta go home. Stay with me. Live with me, baby. Mary's like, I want all of you. And I'm like, girl, are you sure? What does this man offer? Like, you already have the money. You have the career. I'm guessing he offers the company, but I'm like, why would she settle on a nigga like Bob? Why would you pick a married man with children who lives a very middle class life? So anyways, she's like, oh my gosh, Bob, I want all of you. And so she's trying to convince him to stay for a little longer. And so then she starts putting all of him in her mouth, if you know what I mean.
Oh.
The next scene, it cuts to Ruth slicing a zucchini very aggressively. Anyways, Ruth is in the kitchen and she's multitasking like a motherfucker. She got stuff mixing, cookies on the pan. She's taking some stuff out the oven. This scene really had me overwhelmed. I was like, this reminds me of when I'm trying to cook. Just too much shit going on.
I have to restart my potatoes. Oh.
Bob finally walks in. Ruth is like, dude, you're an hour late. Where the fuck have you been? He doesn't really like go into detail about where he's been. He just makes up some other lame ass excuse. This nigga has the nerve to literally ask if dinner is going to be done by the time his parents get home. And I'm just like, like, bitch, go and help her. Go and help her. Literally throw him under the jail immediately. This movie is satire, but it isn't even like far like portrayal of how men and husbands treat their wives or women in their lives. Anyways, Bob ends up taking a shower. He doesn't even stop and try to help Ruth with whatever the fuck she's got going on in the kitchen. He just immediately jumps in the shower. While he's in the shower with his bitch ass, he sees someone outside of the shower, a figure, and he gets so scared, and it's Ruth standing outside of the shower.
Oh, great heavens!
Which I'm just now realizing is so weird. Like, why is she standing literally directly outside of the shower door, just waiting for him to notice her? I'm like, girl, make it known that you're there. Like, Ruth is a little bit of an oddball. So anyways, he gets so scared. He's like, girl, Ruth, what the fuck are you doing? So he gets out of the shower and he's like, girl, don't start no shit with me about where I was last night and my whereabouts. You know, my parents are about to be on the way. Let's not start a fight. Ruth's like, I wasn't gonna say anything. I was just gonna weigh myself. And he was talking about, oh, no wonder why you're upset.
Take that fake apology and shove it right up your hairy...
Put this man under the jail. Ruth is catching hella strays for no reason. She's a stay-at-home mom. She's taking care of the kids. She's cooking dinner for your bitch ass and your bitch ass parents. And you got the nerve to insult her ass again? I personally don't condone cheating. But like, if you're gonna do that, at least just be nice to your partner. Like, you ain't gotta cheat and then be an asshole to them. I don't understand why people do that. If you're gonna cheat, just be a nice person. Just be a nice person to the person. I don't know. Anyways, his parents arrive and he's basically hounding Ruth about how dinner's not ready, which is like, I don't want to hear shit from you. Ruth is fucking shit up in the kitchen. She burnt the cookies. There's smoke everywhere. After a while, she ends up bringing dinner out to Bob, his parents, and the children. And when she takes the top off of the entree that they're having, she finds her son's pet rat in the middle of the dish. Yeah. What the fuck? How the fuck did she miss that? So I'm like, damn, she really did need some help in that kitchen, because what? The whole family's like, ew! And Bob literally goes the fuck off on Ruth. He starts calling her a walking disaster, and he just ends up embarrassing the fuck out of her, which I felt so bad for her. I'm like, damn, all she does is get fucking shitted on by this man. Bob's mom steps in, and she's like, damn, you ain't gotta yell at her like that, Brody. You know, like, chill out, you know, she made a mistake. And he's like, nah, this bitch can't do shit right. Ruth's like, okay, you got all this shit to say. Why don't you have Mary Fisher cook it for your ass? How about that? And then he's like, girl, shut the fuck up. Like, I'm warning you, literally shut the fuck up. Ruth ends up exposing him in front of his parents, and she's like, did you guys know that Mary Fisher is his mistress?
Boom.
So then after she says that, she ends up smashing the rat-infested dinner on the ground. Bam! He gets so mad once she exposes all of this, and he basically ends up telling his kids to go upstairs. He's like, kids, go to your room. This scene is so stupid because, like, he only gives them a second, and then he immediately whips out his belt.
Nickel and Andy, get up to your rooms. Now! Now! Now!
Brody, you didn't even give them a chance to like process what the fuck just happened. So then the kids end up they rush upstairs because dad's on some shit. Bob's parents are trying to get him to calm the fuck down, and Bob's talking to his parents like, oh, you guys made me marry her, I got her pregnant and you made me marry her, I don't even love her, etc. And I'm just like, damn, this really is somebody else's life, and that's terrible. So then later on, Bob is seen packing his suitcase, ready to leave Ruth, and while packing, he has the nerve to literally angrily lecture her and yell at her while she's just sitting there and taking it. I'm like, girl, get up. Like, I'm sorry, get up. Like, and while he's packing up his things, he's like, you're a liability, you're a bad mother, you're a lousy wife, you're a terrible cook. Will die on. Then he says that she's a she-devil. He said the title of the movie. Anyways, he finishes up his lecture saying how a man has needs, and he lists his needs as assets because he's an accountant or some shit. So he lists his needs or his assets as, you know, a home. A man needs a home, family, career, and freedom. Those are the 4 things a man needs. And I guess Ruth isn't fulfilling those needs for him. Bob basically ends up finishing packing his shit up and gets the fuck up out of there. Cuts to some animated ass lightning in the sky, and Ruth is just standing outside hooting and hollering, bro. You know, that's valid. That's fucking valid. She gotta let that shit out some way. Miss Girl has been through the ringer these past couple of weeks. Ruth reiterates multiple times in this movie that she hates Mary Fisher, not her husband. She still has love for her husband. I don't know how, but she hates Mary Fisher. I'm like, girl, have we learned nothing? JoJo, have you learned nothing? And then Ruth begins to start her mission. So Ruth, at this point, she starts to crash out. She turns the TV on and there's like some rock band playing and some satanic shit going on. Then Ruth starts making a list of all of Bob's assets, which are, remember, career, home, family, freedom.
You think Harriet Tubman was walking around with a fucking nice shiny fucking dress on with a fucking crown on her head when she was taking slaves to freedom?
Then she puts all of Mary's novels and a few other things in a washer. And at this point I was like, girl, what are you trying to do? But then I started to like piece together what she was doing when she put a hairdryer under a pillow. She's trying to destroy the house. She's trying all these kinds of tactics. She's smoking 2 cigarettes at once and not putting them out. She's got multiple plugins and one like cord. She puts even chemical cleaning supplies in a microwave, turns that bitch on. Her house is literally about to blow up. Like literally there's smoke everywhere. But before her house blows up in exactly 17 seconds, Ruth, last minute, she didn't even have this shit packed before, she decides to grab Mary Fisher's file from her husband's client drawer, a picture of her family, and then she takes a minute to put on lipstick while her house is about to be blown to bits. You know, slay, I guess. Then she quickly rushes for the front door and her house gets destroyed. It explodes. And then we get a shot of Ruth like just walking away from her house as it's exploding, and the green screen is just painfully obvious. After her house is destroyed, it's fucked. There's a lot of news stations and neighbors outside of her destroyed house. And I low-key thought she left the kids inside of the home, but they end up popping right back up. Looks like they were coming home from school. Ruth is in a taxi. She puts the kids in a taxi and the kids are like, Mom, like, what about all our shit? She's like, yeah, man, it's all gone. And she's just nonchalant as fuck. She crosses off home off of Bob's assets list. This girl is dedicated. So then we get her and her kids pulling up to Mary's house. Mary's ex-boy toy butler Garcia ends up answering the door, and Ruth is like, the kids want to see their daddy. The Garcia guy, the butler, is like, oh, this dude got kids? That's messy. Then he's like, oh, for sure. You're gonna want to go inside and take a right into that hallway, and that's where their dad is. The kids run up to their father, and it appears he is in the pool with Mary, and they're taking a little bubble bath, like naked or some shit. Then Mary screams when she sees the kids. Ruth comes up there, and she's like, kids, this is your new home. And then she just leaves. The kids, they don't even seem like the least bit concerned as to where the fuck their mom is going. They weren't like, Mommy, no. Mommy, don't leave us. Mommy, don't go. They were just like, okay. Then Bob gets out of the pool in a towel and chases after Ruth. And he's like, girl, you ain't about to leave me with these kids. you! While he's chasing after Ruth, he's like, the kids need to be home with their mother. And she's like, Brody, there ain't no home. Home does not exist. We don't have a home anymore. Bob says, well, where the fuck are you gonna be at so I can reach you? And she's like, I don't know, bro, but I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back for the kids. And he's like, while Ruth gets back in her taxi and drives off, he's like, Ruth! For some reason, his tail drops and we just get Bob's bare ass. And I'm like, I didn't need that. Later on, Ruth is at some diner and she's looking through Mary's file. She notices Mary has a mom that is in a retirement home. So Ruth does the logical thing and she ends up changing her name to Rose, gets a job as a nurse where Mary's old mother lives. Ruth is very psychotic, obviously. I support her because she is trying to ruin both of their lives, not just her husband's lives. Karma, bitch. Ruth, now Rose, has a boss who is now showing her around the retirement home. The boss says that they, basically sedate the residents so that they don't remember that their families abandoned them. So while she's at her new job, Ruth takes this opportunity to get up in the middle of the night and replace the residents' pills that keep them very sleepy and unaware with some pills that are supposed to wake you up and get you energized. Ruth's plan is to basically wake Mary's mother up so that she's aware her daughter put her ass in a retirement home and basically abandoned her. Therefore, her mom, Mary's mom, can be a pain in the ass to Mary. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you get where I'm getting at? So then it cuts to a bunch of old people the next day and they're playing soccer. They're really energetic. The other nurse, Hooper, who's been there for a long ass time, catches on to what Ruth just did. Hooper confronts Ruth, now Rose, about switching the pills, saying she's going to report Rose. And, Ruth is like, yeah, girl, I did switch the pills, but you know what? Women like me and you, we gotta stick together. If I was the other nurse, I would have been like, what the fuck does that mean? Woman like me and you. What are you trying to get at? We cut back to Mary and Bob's situation, and Mary is trying to work on writing her next novel, and the children that Ruth just abandoned are getting on her motherfucking nerves. They are just making too much noise, and she can't focus because there's too much noise. She needs silence. Mary calls her man Bob, for some emotional support as she just tries to navigate, trying to wrangle his badass kids. And he's like, girl, you got this book to write, you need to make some money. And Mary's like, yeah, but I can't concentrate because your kids are so loud and annoying. And then Bob literally has the audacity to start lecturing Mary, and he's like, Mary, the kids have been through an emotional experience and they need time to adjust to the environment, and you're their stepmother. And while he's literally talking to her on the phone, and he's literally checking out a whole other woman at the red light. Typical. And girl, I would have been like, stepmother. I would have left his ass so fast, because what you mean stepmother? Your baby mother just dropped the kids off at my house and now I'm just stuck in this situation. I am not a stepmother. Then we're back at the retirement home where Ruth works, and Mary Fisher's mother is talking and she's aware and she's up and she's reading her daughter's novel, and she's like, this shit is ass. This shit is garbage. And then Mary Fisher's mom is basically talking about her daughter's a big old slut. Ruth is like, Mrs. Fisher, why don't you go visit your daughter? Why don't you go visit Mary? Mary's mom, Mrs. Fisher, is like, yeah, I think I might go do that. So then we're back with Mary. The kids are basically making themselves at home. We fucked up Mary's living room. They're eating in there. They're watching TV. They're wearing her clothes. They're running around.
Belt.
None of this is worth it for a man. And then on top of that, everyone is disrespecting her. The children, the maid is disrespecting her, the butler, and her man. And then she hears a doorbell. When she opens the door, she finds that it is her mother, and her mother's like, hey. And then we cut to Ruth, and Ruth is very committed to this nursing job. And so one of the biggest rules at the retirement home is that no resident is allowed to wet their bed. If they wet their bed, they are kicked out of the retirement home. So what does Ruth do? Ruth ends up taking some piss and pours it on Mrs. Fisher's bed to get her kicked out of the retirement home so that she can end up living with Mary instead. Then we cut back to Mary, and she's having dinner with Bob, his children, and now her mother. The children and Mary's mom are shitting on how nasty Mary's food tastes. Yeah. On top of that, Mary's mom ends up exposing Mary and is like, oh, 41, Mary? You're not 34, you're 41. Mary's like, what are you talking about? I'm 34 years old, like what? And Mary's mom is like, no, I have the birth certificates. And she's like, shut up! And she crashes out at the table because her mom just exposed her age in front of her man and her man's children. We cut back to my girl Ruth, and she's fucking up a donut in the break room, and Hooper, the other nurse, is there, and she's looking at that donut like seductively, like she wants it real bad. Ruth is like, girl, come and eat this donut. Ruth and Hooper end up fucking up a whole box of donuts. After they bond over the donuts they just had, Hooper decides to confess to Ruth, now Rose, the woman she just met, about how she's been working at the retirement home for 22 years and has successfully saved up to $55,000. You know, I don't know a ton of math. I suck at math, but the math is not mathing here. How have you given 22 years of your life to a company? All that you got out of it was $55,000. What the fuck kind of rate were they paying her? Later on, the boss is checking beds to make sure nobody has wet their bed, and lo and behold, she has found that Mrs. Fisher's bed is wet, which is literally against the rules. This is a retirement home. We don't do that shit here, so Mrs. Fisher has gotta go. The boss kicks out Mrs. Fisher. The boss ends up firing Ruth. Then the movie cuts back to Mary, where she's having a meeting with a reporter from Vogue talking about her book. But then Mary is interrupted and she has to leave to go answer a phone call. So while she's gone, her mother starts talking to the reporter and she's telling all of Mary's business about how much of a slut Mary is and her sex life and how she's a whore.
I said, damn, bitch.
Literally just spilling her entire shit. Anyways, we're back with Ruth and she's now leaving the nursing home since she got fired from her job. And as she's departing, she kisses all the residents goodbye, like literally like mwah, mwah, mwah. She ends up at a gas station, still in her nurse's clothing, like she's wasting no fucking time. And she crosses off family on Bob's asset list because Mary's mother, Mrs. Fisher, coming into Mary's house is probably gonna fuck up and start a lot of shit. Ruth or Rose could have gone harder in this area. I feel like she could have made the kids turn against their dad or just do something a little bit more targeted towards Bob. Anyways, the woman is just beyond committed because I would have given up at trying to blow up the house. I would have been like, oh, this shit is too much work. I'm gonna just file for child support or something. I don't know. So if I use Ruth or Rose, like please just, you know who I'm talking about. The next thing on Rose's list is career. So she ends up getting on a bus to NYC because that's where Bobby Boy works. While the bus is taking off, her nurse friend Hooper pops up and she's like running after the bus and she's like, hey! Hooper is literally staring directly at Rose in the window. Ruth is staring back at Hooper and she's like just staring at her. She doesn't even alert the bus driver and be like, hey bus driver, like I have a friend who's literally trying to catch the bus, stop. The bus ends up stopping. Hooper gets on the bus and Ruth's like, girl, what are you doing here? And Hooper's like, I ain't got a plan with my life, but I feel like you do, so I'm gonna just follow you, which I'm like, and I'm just like, you don't even know Ruth, yet you're willing to go spend your time and money to go on whatever fucking shit she's on. Like, girl, what? And the two women, they head to New York to do who knows what. Ruth and Hooper end up visiting a dingy ass office space and they buy it using Hooper's money. Why would you spend all that time saving up and working just to give that money to somebody else? So they start revamping the office as their own, and Ruth's goal is to basically create an employment agency for women who are unloved and unwanted, whatever that fucking means. To promote her employment agency, she litters all over NYC with flyers. You get a flyer, you get a flyer, everybody gets a fucking flyer. At this point, Ruth is on a totally different side quest because now she is the CEO of some employment agency where she's hiring women who have been neglected, overlooked, or have just recently been through some shit or left their husbands. So she's essentially creating an army, and I would say she's fucking productive. We have not seen her rest, sleep, eat. She is just on it. So then we finally get back to the nigga Bob, and he gets inside of a cab with another woman who is not Mary, so we already know what kind of shenanigans he's up to. When she tracks Bob down, she finds out he has a whole company at this point. So now we know that she's been on this like revenge shit for at least a couple months now, because before he was just an accountant at some office and now he has a whole company.
A, B, C, D, F, G.
So anyways, Ruth Rose ends up infiltrating his company, and so she slides one of her employment ads under his office or something. The ad is like, oh, if you want a hot, sexy secretary, call this number. So of course, Bob ends up calling the number. So then Rose ends up finding a young, blonde, pretty, curly-haired girl's application, and she hires her as Bob's secretary. Meanwhile, his actual girl, Mary, finds a magazine cover that basically says that her mom is telling all of her secrets about about her being a whore. Mary's whole reputation, her brand, her success is dying. And Mary is basically going through it. Them kids are tearing up her house. And so she tries to give Bobby Boy a call, but Bob is with his secretary canoodling under the desk. Literally, Mary's voice is in the background and she's like, Bob, are you there? Pick up, baby, please. And he just ignores the fuck out of her. Once she hears that Bob isn't picking up the phone, Mary hears a man making some rather sensual sounds in the other room. So then she opens the door wide open and she finds her butler Garcia, aka her ex-boy toy, that she threw to the side for Bob, working out very passionately. Mary is flustered by all this. She's like, whoa, because she hasn't gotten any dick in a very long time because Bob is cheating on her in New York. Miss Girl is hot and bothered. She's flustered. She's thirsty. So then he goes all the way up to her. He gets all up in Mary's face and he's like, and then shuts the door in her face.
Have a fucked up day, bitch. Know who you fucking with.
That's embarrassing as fuck. Mary's depressed. She starts popping pills. I'm guessing sleeping pills or something. Bob's mangy ass finally comes home and Mary's like, Bob, baby, where have you been? I've been calling you. And this trifling ass man has the nerve to recycle the same lie that he used on Ruth Rose earlier about his tire blowing out with Mary, who he originally used his lie for. And to make matters worse, he's got a whole lipstick print on his neck. He has no shame. Then him and Mary get into it because she starts complaining about how these magazines are just straight up dogging her and talking shit about her. And instead of being like, babe, it's okay, like you won't have to deal with this anymore, he's just like, yeah, they are talking shit about you and your new book is ass. Then they start arguing. He takes her covers off of this woman's bed and he decides to sleep elsewhere. Mary at this point is lying on the floor. She's tore up about all of this. And then her mom is next door listening to the whole entire argument. Like she's just gleeful than a motherfucker. Why did your mom hate you this much, Mary? What did you do to her? Besides leaving her in a retirement home for like 10 years. Anyways, at this point, we are back with Ruth Rose and she is on a walk with Olivia Honey, the woman that she hired to become Bob's secretary, and they're talking about Bob. Olivia Honey is unaware that Ruth Rose is Bob's ex-wife. She just thinks that Ruth Rose is her boss and they're talking about a guy, Bob. Olivia Honey says that she loves Bob and that she wants to know how old Bobby feels about her, but she's scared that if she confesses her feelings that it'll scare him away. Ruth Rose ends up telling Olivia, like, girl, you need to tell him how you feel. Like, what's the worst that can happen if you tell a man you love him? Ruth, girl, you are evil. You are evil for setting up this poor girl to get her feelings hurt. It cuts to Olivia and Bobby basically knocking boots. Like, he is fucking up his whole office trying to get into this girl's drawers. And then they end up settling down and Olivia goes out and says it. She says, I love you, Bob. I really do. I just love you. He's looking at her like, huh?
Girl, what the fuck is you talking about?
And then it cuts to poor Olivia talking to Rose about how old Bobby fired her. While she's talking to Ruth, she spills some tea about Bobby Boy and how he's not only a heartbreaker, but he actually cheats his clients by tacking on interest and putting the money that he's tacked on into a bank account he has in Switzerland or some shit. So I guess in other words, he's on some fraudulent shit.
Lock his ass up. Lock his ass up. You going to jail.
Ruth recruits Olivia on her mission to destroy Bob's life by making the two sneak into Bob's office and having Olivia log into his accounting shit. And Olivia ends up transferring $200,000 of one of Bob's clients to his account, basically trying to frame him for embezzlement. Ruth justifies this by saying, oh, this just makes the truth come to light. And it's like, girl, as she should, but you're framing him for a crime. Let's just call it out for what it is. Ruth goes through Bob's filing cabinet while Olivia Honey is framing Bob for fraud. Ruth ends up finding suggestive photos of Olivia Honey and Bob, doing it on the office copy machine. And while they see these photos, Bob is wearing a ring that says RM, which stands for Robert and Mary. This is the ring that Mary Fisher gave him. And I just want to say, fucking on the copy machine is nasty as fuck. Imagine clocking in on a Monday trying to do your job and there's some crusty residue on the machine where you're trying to make copies. Like, that is just a fucked up way to start off the week. It cuts to Mary Fisher and Bob and her publisher at the mall trying to do a book signing for a book that nobody showed up for. Mary is trying to get people to buy her book. Bob is in the background literally reading from a newspaper critic about how ass her book is, right in front of her. I swear he did this shit on purpose. You asshole. Bob and Mary are riding back home and he checks the mailbox and he's like, oh babe, you got a fan letter. And she's like, oh, for real? So anyway, she opens up the mail and finds the photos of Bob fondling another woman, which is clearly not her. Mary ends up connecting the dots while she's looking at the photos and slaps Bob. And she immediately gets the fuck out of the car and she's just devastated. Then when she gets to the front door of her mansion, she sees her Russian maid coming out with her bags packed, and the maid's like, girl, I signed up to cook and clean for only you, not your mama, not your baby daddy's kids, not your man, and the job has just become too much. I'm out.
Fisher, up with this bullshit. I will not foot. I quit.
Then to make matters worse, she walks in and finds her very grown and adult butler, Garcia, dancing with Bob's teenage daughter.
Yeah.
Put him under the jail too. That's fucking nasty. She fires Garcia, which as she should, and then she tells Bob's daughter to take off her dress because the girl keeps wearing her shit. And the girl's like, you're not my mother. And homegirl catches the fastest fade ever. Like, roll the clip.
You're not my mother.
Mary finds Bob's other very young son drinking from a bottle, and she snatches him up too. She puts him in a headlock, and she tells his ass to go upstairs too. And I'm like, finally Mary is getting some balls here. So then we're back with Ruth Rose, and she's at the phone booth making a phone call to the IRS. She is about to call the IRS on Bob so that he is getting charged for fraud. So the next day or week, Mary is throwing a big white party. She's making her way around the room. She's greeting her friends. And then Bob comes up behind her, and I'm like, what is he still doing here? Then after this, Bob decides to make the lowest effort toast in front of everyone for Mary. After he finishes his toast, there ends up being a couple men, emerging from the background. And it's the police. These motherfuckers handcuff Bob real quick, and they say it loud and clear for everyone in the party to hear. Robert Patchett, I got a warrant out for your arrest. You're getting arrested for fraud and embezzlement. Oh, Mary's mom, Mrs. Fisher, starts laughing. It starts doing her evil ass laugh. And she's like, bye-bye, Bobby.
Bye-bye, Bobby.
Bye-bye, Bobby. This is like a vocal stem for me. And then Bob is literally crying in the backseat of the police's car. Then we're at a lawyer's office, and they're explaining to Bob how he has about 26 counts of fraud and embezzlement, and he's got to pay $300,000 for fines, and he's looking at about 2 to 5 years in prison. Goddamn. Bob's like, oh my gosh, that's bananas. I'm not going to jail. The lawyer's like, chill, I got this plan. We'll hook you up with this guy named Judge Phillip. He's very easy. He lets off guys like you who have done white collar crimes, so you'll be out of there. You won't even get a hard sentencing or anything like that. Then we'll just tell the judge that, the computer had a glitch, and that's why it's transferred money from your client's account to your account, Bob. Like, do you see where we're going with this? Like, we're gonna get you out of this. And then the lawyer's like, yeah, we know this is true because you have been taking money from your girlfriend's account, Mary, for quite some time. That's how we know that, this transfer glitch, lie is really gonna work. Bob's like, all right, sounds like a plan. And then Mary and Bob end up, leaving the office, and Bob starts telling Mary, girl, thank you for holding me down. Gosh, how did a bum like me end up being with such an amazing woman like you? Mary's like, nigga, you have been stealing from me. You have been biting the hand that feeds you. They get out of the elevator, and then Mary's speed walking, and he's like, Mary! And she's like, I'm glad I saw the real you. You're a fucking asshole. And then she goes to one of those fun revolving doors and tells him she wants him out of her life. And then his hand gets stuck in the revolving door, which I feel like must have hurt so bad. I don't know if this part was scripted or not, but I was like, damn, that shit's gotta hurt. But then there's a woman at the courthouse who Ruth met at her employment agency and helped get a job there. And so she ends up getting a phone call. Since this woman has a lot of loyalty to Ruth Rose for helping her get a job, she's like, of course, I'll do anything for you, Ruth Rose. So Ruth asked this woman who works in the courthouse to have Bob's original judge be moved from Judge Phillip to Judge Brown. The woman ends up swapping the judge's schedules, so now Bob's new judge is Judge Brown instead of Judge Phillip, who would have let him off easy. After Ruth makes the call to the woman, she crosses off freedom from her Bob's assets list because she knows Bobby Boy is about to go to jail. It's the day of Bob's trial, and he's talking with his lawyer, and he's like, what are we doing? After Judge Phillip lets me off, am I allowed to take Judge Phillips out for dinner as like a thank you? And his lawyer's like, girl, it's fine. Yeah, you can pay for dinner. Like, Bob for real thinks he's getting off easy until we meet Judge Brown. Bob looks like his life literally just flashed before his eyes, which I'm sure it's about to anyways. We turn to see Judge Brown is not an old white man named Philip, but is a black woman with a Jerry curl. I could just tell she runs a very, very, very strict program. The trial finishes up, and the judge concludes that Bob is getting fined $250,000 and is sentenced to 18 months in jail. I still feel like it's not enough just because all of the havoc he put Ruth and Mary through. Like, we need to give him more sentencing for these crimes. Put him under the jail. Bob crashes the fuck out and they haul his ass to jail. But before they take him to the back, Ruth Rose stands up in one of the pews. Bob notices her and he's like, girl, Ruth, where the fuck have you been? She is just mugging the fuck out of him.
Slay! Slay!
Then he has the audacity to be like, oh my gosh, girl, you gotta help me, Ruth! And then they close the door. Ruth is like, damn, I almost felt sorry for his punk ass. Then we cut to a few months later. Bob is in jail serving his sentence. And then he gets a visitor and it's his 2 children and Ruth. At this point, Ruth Rose is glowing. She looks extremely different from the Ruth in the very beginning of the movie to now. Bob sees Ruth Rose outside of the prison. He's like, Ruth, girly pop, you look great. He's like, thanks for bringing the kids. And then Bob is like, hey, when I get out of here, I'm gonna cook for you and the kids. And she's like, that'll be nice, Bob. And then she just ends up leaving him with the kids. And I'm like, I hope you don't abandon them this time. Like, do not abandon them at this prison yard. Then we get an update on Mary after Ruth low-key destroyed her life as well. Anyways, Mary has basically moved out of her big-ass pink mansion. At this point, Mary has completely rebranded herself. She's not the woman who wears pink pastels and floppy hats. She's now transitioned into this, which I don't really know what that is, but she's transitioned into something completely different from where she was in the very beginning of the movie. She ends up coming out with this book called Trust and Betrayal. So in the beginning of the movie, she was writing books about fantasy and romance and erotic stuff. And now her books have transitioned into more of like raw pain, hard parts about relationships and stuff like that. So she's more of like in a dark Mary era, I guess. What I realized is Mary's gonna chase it back for real because she turned her trauma into money. Mary's book ends up being successful. She ends up even meeting a man at the book signing that she's at who looks way better than Bob. We come back to Ruth, and Ruth walks out into a sea of women on the streets of wherever the fuck she's at. And this song, You're the Devil in Disguise by Elvis plays, and the movie ends. I feel like the movie is really deep and has an interesting take on husbands cheating. A lot of men get away with cheating and they often go unscathed. They face little to no consequences when it comes to their actions. And society definitely normalizes men cheating because it happens so often. That's sort of what I saw in the movie. Men rarely get any kind of consequences for the emotional pain and misery they put their partners through when they do things like this. I thought Ruth's monologue about how women like her have to try twice as hard to be accepted in society or be considered beautiful and treated well, unlike other women who don't have to try as hard and are still respected and seen and adored and loved, was honestly real. And I still feel like even though the movie was created in the 80s, it's still something that we can still see and notice today. If you are a woman who isn't conventionally attractive, who doesn't meet society standards, you are often overlooked or not treated well, like Ruth was in the beginning of the movie, just treated as a doormat, disrespected constantly. The movie demonstrated really building yourself back up when things crumble. The movie shows Ruth's anger, sadness. We see her being taken advantage of and overlooked to someone who's resilient, empowered, confident. So anyways, this movie took me 1,000,001 fucking years to watch, script, write, do the video, and I finally did it. So round of applause for me, okay? Round of a fucking applause for me. But I really had a good time in, watching this movie again. This was a really fun, campy movie. For some reason, I find it very comforting. I feel like it tells a really good story and it teaches a lesson, honestly. The lesson I got out of it, probably don't cheat on your wives. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. I'm gonna see y'all in the next one. Bye.